Okay, this one might be a little bit controversial today, but I think it's an important topic, and that's doing business with friends. Now, lots of people are tempted to go into business with their friends. I have been tempted to do so numerous times. I have also actually done so and have a little bit of experience to speak to what that can be like. Now, it's super common, I think, because friends share ideas together. Like, it's super common to be at a bar or at a restaurant or hanging out with friends and coming up with this $1 million idea together. And so when you brainstorm such an idea together, it seems natural to then transition from idea phase to business phase with those same people. And I feel like our relationships with our friends, they're definitely different than business relationships or professional relationships. And sometimes we don't necessarily think about the difference before it's too late. So I just kind of want to talk out some possibilities here to maybe get you thinking before you jump into that without actually going through the whole process in your head. Now, I do want to caution you to think it through carefully before you go down that path, because sometimes you might not even realize it's happening. Now, I've brainstormed ideas with friends, and before we even realize it, we're buying a domain name together, and I have to shake my head a little bit and stop and realize, wow, we're about to go into business together. Is that something I want to do? And I can attest to how awkward it could be to pump the brakes on the whole thing at that point. Starting a business with a friend can be really great during the initial startup phase because you both have the energy, you're kind of feeding off of each other's energy, each other's enthusiasm, you're both excited, and there's usually not a ton of money moving around yet, so you don't have that kind of friction just yet. So things feel smooth, right? But once the business is really running, it's usually not as easy as it seems, and if you're not careful, it's shockingly easy to ruin both the business and the friendship at the same time. Now, I'm not an expert. I'm just sharing ideas that I've learned, and spoiler, it didn't always go so well when doing business with friends. Now, if you haven't started business before or you haven't worked with your friends before, you may not even be thinking that this is a thing. You're probably wondering why we're having this conversation because, of course, your friendships are rock solid. You can handle anything. You guys have been through thick and thin. How could business be any different? In fact, your friendship is going to carry you through any business challenge, right? You're going to be bigger than Elon Musk because your friendship is rock solid and two heads are better than one or something like that, right? Nonsense. Look, friendships are built on shared experiences and mutual interests, but they usually exist within very defined parameters. They usually are based around, good times, having fun, and the occasional short-term challenges like, helping each other move or supporting each other through a breakup, emotional time, that kind of thing. But I just want to ask, what if all day, every day was a challenging time? That's business. Business relationships, on the other hand, are carefully selected. They're hand-picked by the business owner. They're very intentional. They're not made based on good times. They're made based on the experiences that people bring to the table and their capacity to come out of every challenge better than when they came into it. Friendships, on the other hand, often happen organically. They're not necessarily handpicked or selected. They happen based on experiences together, and they're generally fun experiences. But business relationships, I'll say it again, are carefully picked for the skills that everyone brings to the table, right? So they come from very different places. Now, it's possible, obviously, to transition a friendship into a business relationship, but in my opinion, that can only be done with very clear boundaries and expectations, or things get messy in a hurry. Now, it would be unwise to base everything you do solely off of what I'm saying. So I suggest reading what is considered to be a foundational text for entrepreneurs, written by a guy who has been named as the world's #1 small business guru. Personally, I think Every single person who wants to start a business should read this before doing anything. It's called The E-Myth Revisited. Should definitely be mandatory reading. There we are. Anybody starting a business should read this first. Now, I believe the two most important takeaways from this book, at least for me, are one, not everyone who knows how to do a thing, a service, or build a certain product should automatically make it a business. It seems very common that people think, I'm good at a thing, I do it better than other people, I should start a business. Well, doing a thing or having a skill is completely different than running a business. And you need to recognize that, and you need to learn business skills. If you know how to bake a cake better than anybody, that doesn't necessarily mean you have the business skills to run a cake business, right? And I believe this is why they say 20% of small businesses fail in the first year, 50% are done in the first 5 years, and 65% have failed by year 10. Now, the second big takeaway for me from this book, which is most relevant to this particular conversation, is that no matter who you're doing business with, you need to clearly detail everyone's roles and responsibilities before you do anything. Now, Michael Gerber says you should draw out on a piece of paper all of the roles your business needs. That's everything from sales to marketing to operations, shipping, whatever, everything. Janitor, everything. Then go through and assign names to every role. Even if you're wearing multiple hats, even if your name shows up on multiple roles. Small business, you're going to be the janitor. You're also going to be in sales. You're also going to do marketing. You're going to do multiple things, but you need to have somebody's name assigned to every role and responsibility. This is a critical exercise for multiple reasons. One, clarity prevents conflict. Everyone knows their role and expectations, which will prevent stepping on each other's toes, which could otherwise lead to confusion and disagreements. Secondly, it ensures accountability. In a well-functioning business, someone needs to be accountable for every single task. And by listing out the roles, you ensure that nothing gets overlooked and each partner knows their responsibility for specific areas of the business. Now, this is going to eliminate the common issue where partners assume the other person was handling something, and then nobody ends up doing that one thing, and people scratch their heads and wonder, well, why didn't you do it? Why didn't you do it? Clarify the decision maker on each part of the business. Now, third, this is going to focus your effort on people's strengths. Basically, when you're identifying these roles, you should be putting the right person in there for the right role. Who is the more salesy person? Who is the more behind the scenes person? Utilize those skills and put them in the right places. Defining those roles is going to allow partners to focus on their strengths rather than trying to do everything, including the things they're very weak at. So if one person is good in sales and marketing and the other is better at operations and finance, clearly define that so that each partner knows what their role is and they operate within their area of competence. Now, fourth, this creates a scalable structure. So even if the business starts small, defining those roles early, it creates a framework for future growth, right? You should always be starting a business for thinking about how big it's going to be and putting measures in place now and taking steps now to move in that direction. Never think of your business as just the size it is now. Always be working towards that other size, that growth, right? So this creates a framework where you're going to be able to clearly understand what roles are what and hire for new roles as you grow, right? And again, you should really always be looking to scale, because if a business is not growing, they're shrinking. And this is because other businesses in your market, competition is growing. And as they grow, if you're not, then you're shrinking. Now, Michael Gerber argues that many small businesses fail because they don't operate like businesses. They basically operate like jobs the owners have created for themselves. And I'm pretty sure that you're not trying to just create another job for yourself where you're the boss. You want to create a business that eventually runs itself. So when roles in that company are defined, it's easier to hire and delegate tasks as the business grows, making it scalable. Fifth thing, you want to separate the owner from the operator, right? Now, Michael Gerber stresses the importance of thinking like a business owner rather than just an operator doing the daily work. So when you define the roles, it allows you to step back and view the business as a system where the tasks and responsibilities can be assigned rather than something that you personally manage entirely 100%. Again, creating a job for yourself versus creating a system, really. I would think that you would want the day to come where you can sit on the beach and your business is still running. But that's only if you build it like a system and take yourself out of being the sole operator. Now, this mindset shift is really crucial for business owners for long-term success because it allows you to eventually work on the business, not just in it. Sixth thing this allows you to do is it reduces emotional decision making. So in partnerships, personal dynamics can lead to emotionally driven decisions if the rules aren't clear. But when you define those rules, it helps each partner approach decisions from a business first perspective, which then of course reduces the emotional interference in critical matters. Sometimes one friend is business minded and the other is not. And so this can help both parties to understand that this is a business. It's not just friends working together. And I can give you some examples of this. So when I moved from a security guard into a site supervisor, I struggled to give direction because my coworkers, which were my friends, I had grown up with them basically in the industry. So I had started as a green, fresh-faced security guard, scared of my own shadow. I learned how to deal with significant incidents together with that crew, and we kind of went to battle together. And when you go to battle together, you also recreate together and you decompress together, and so you build these tight bonds. And so when I moved into a leadership role, those friends didn't understand the difference. I was still their buddy at work and outside of work. And so it was very difficult for me to be a leader. There was a lot of resistance from their side, and I struggled to find my voice because here I was looking at my friends and trying to tell them what to do based on what we had to do, our policy and procedure and all this stuff. And in fact, I only succeeded as a leader and was able to move up when I moved out of that site into a completely new site where nobody knew me. And they only knew me as that leader. I came in as a site supervisor. It was basically a lateral move, but allowed me to move up from there because those people, we didn't have those friendships. And that kind of goes along with the saying it's lonely at the top, and it has to do with struggling to have friendships and be the boss at the same time, right? And those subordinates don't often understand the difference. Another example, and this is sort of a little bit more along the lines of a business owner. So one of my best friends ended up becoming my direct report. So he was a manager and I was the branch manager. He reported into me. Now, we understood well enough. He had been a business owner before. I had been a business owner before. We basically knew that when we come in, we take off the friend hat, we put on the work hat. And that doesn't mean that we were like cold to each other or anything. It just means that we didn't take any of that away and we understood what had to be done. But when we had disagreements at work, it bothered me inside because of our friendship. And I think that it also made it harder for him to ask me for support when he needed it. Now, again, we handled it well enough, but I was very happy when we finally separated that because it was challenging. It's tough to work with your best friend and have to tell them what to do when things aren't going well, right? The other thing is that emotions can always creep in, regardless of how well you handle things. And so that is why defined roles and responsibilities matter so much. Now, you probably should also ask yourself, is your friend the right fit? And I think a very important first question here is ask yourself, why do you even want to do business with your friend? Why are you considering this? Are they exceptional at what you need for the business, or are they just your friend? Now, I learned the hard way that hiring based on personal connection can backfire. When I look back, I wish that I had hired based on skill and fit, not just somebody I like. So ask yourself, if they weren't your friend, would you still hire them? Do they have all the skills that you would actually look for when you're hiring for that particular role or somebody to partner with? The best hires are those who can perform well and make your life easier. And that is not always your friend. Now, of course, there are exceptions to the rule. I'm not saying that it is impossible to do business with your friends. There are definitely some partnerships with friends that have succeeded in my life, and also some very famous relationships. Ben and Jerry's Ice Cream, to the best of my knowledge, they are apparently still friends, and that is a wildly successful company. Larry Page and Sergey Brin from Google, apparently they're still friends. I don't know them. This is just what I'm hearing. Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak. Now, they are a good example of business driving friends apart, from what I understand. Although I believe they reconciled later, but that's a fairly good example of where you start together and then move apart. And at the end of the day, really, I'm sure there's lots of examples out there of people making it work, but that doesn't make it easy. And business is hard enough as it is, right? You want the right people in the right role to help you make your life easier. And having a friend there, in my opinion, isn't what you need to get through the tough times of business. Your friend will be there outside of work. You can leave your daily grind and go and still have that relationship with them, and you're not risking it that way. There is some risk there when you get into business together, so something to consider. Now, personally, I believe it's rare to make it work, but it is possible, obviously, right? Now, I would suggest asking yourself, do you want the stress of building a business and the stress of trying to keep a good friendship intact through it all? If so, is having your friend involved worth the risk to the business and the friendship? Because you could risk both at the same time. I think the conditions for success would be that you both understand business dynamics. You can both handle tough conversations without taking things personally, kind of separating the emotion from the business itself, and having clear boundaries between work and personal life. So you leave the job for the day, you leave the work for the day, you put on the friend hat, you go have a beer kind of thing. Now, running a business, often you never get to take that hat off. You're always a business owner, at least for the first little while. So keep that in mind as well. It's not going to be necessarily that easy to switch gears. Now, if you and your friend meet all these conditions, it can work, maybe. But again, I think it remains risky. So keep that in mind. So in closing, in summary, I would say that friendships and businesses, I dare say, rarely mix well together without clear roles and boundaries. So make sure you define the roles, make sure you hire based on skill, and set your boundaries to protect both your business and your friendship. If there's one key takeaway here, I think it's that you want to think of your business as a business and hire for that. If that friend fits the qualifications, then go forth and set clear expectations. But consider the big question: why are you considering going to business with that friend? Is it because of the relationship, or because they bring something special to that business? Now, I'd love to hear your stories. I know that there's probably lots of examples of it not working, as well as lots of examples of it working. Tell me your stories. Have you ever tried starting a business with a friend? How did it go? Share it in the comments. Let's chat about it. And if you're on your own grind, please consider hitting like and subscribe, and grab a coffee for the next video. See you next time.